Well, thank you. Thank you. With all those credentials, the only thing that got a woo was Oprah. And I have to tell you that that's when my mother thought I had made it in the world. PhD, professor, but when I was on Oprah, and see, I always say twice because the first time could have been a mistake. You know, it's like when you have the second date, you know the person likes you. The first one could have been a mistake. The other thing I have to say is that my mother, when she watched the first one, she said she could tell that Oprah liked me. And I asked how she knew that, and she said she noticed that Oprah shook my hand longer than any of the other guests. So I looked at the tape, I had a stopwatch, and my mother was right. So I'm really happy to be here. I live in Roseville. I could have walked here. I'm just delighted that with the size and success of this club. I also have to say that as somebody's ancestors from Ireland, I always like to say that I inherited the optimistic Irish genes, not the depressive ones. So I feel in good company. Having said that, of course, it's hard to be optimistic about our country right now. We live in what historians are saying is the most politically divided time, polarized time, since the 1850s. Some of us are old enough to remember the 60s as a difficult era. People still had Thanksgiving dinner with their relatives then, but there are now people who are boycotting Thanksgiving dinner because they feel so at odds with each other politically. So what I want to engage you in conversation about is the state of our country and what we can do about it. I want to give you just one piece of polling data to document the extent of the polarization that has risen for the last 30 years. So we're not talking about something just since the last election. And this polling data is about attitudes towards interracial marriage and inter-party marriage. So in 1960, 35 or 40% of Americans said they would be uncomfortable with their son or daughter marrying somebody of another race. And only 5% said they would be uncomfortable with somebody marrying somebody of the other political party. Those lines have now crossed. And 35 or 40% of Americans say they'd be uncomfortable with an inter-party marriage, and only 5% with an interracial marriage. So that's just a bit of documentation that we have gotten to the point where people who vote differently seem not only strange, but perhaps enemies. And we often don't want to be around them. So, and of course the last election brought this to a head, but it's been rising for 30 or more years. It's also happening around the world. Okay, look at Brexit in Great Britain. Their divorce from Europe. Look at what's happening in France, so many other countries. There's something going on in the world where we're not holding together. So I want to engage you in a question, and then I'm going to have you talk about it in pairs, and we're going to have some conversation together. The question is, what are the sources of this polarization? Why has this been happening? What's been going on in our country, and it's happening in other countries as well, over the last 30 years that has led to this degree of toxic political polarization? I'd like to encourage you to resist the temptation to say it's the fault of the other political party. If you do that, I will reprimand you, okay? Because that just perpetuates it, right? And the other political party in America is not in England right now, okay, or in France. So these are forces that have happened here, but are also happening in other countries. So I'd like you to try to think of this in a broader level than just the other side. And I'd like you to think of it not just since the last election. So the question is, what are some of the sources of this rise in toxic political polarization? It's not just disagreeing about issues. They call it affective or emotional polarization, where dislike, vitriol, attacking motives. The other side aren't just wrong, they want to hurt the country. You know what I'm talking about? That's the thing I'm saying. Not that we've always had political arguments. And that's actually good for a democracy. But I'm talking about this sort of personal level that has occurred. So what are some of the sources of this? And I'd like you to take 30 seconds of silent reflection on that question. What are the sources of this rising political polarization in recent decades? 30 seconds of silence. Okay, so here's the drill. When I say go, I'm going to ask you to pair up with somebody at your table. This is not a whole table discussion. This is for pairs, to share some ideas you came up with for 3 minutes. Don't do it yet. Don't leave some poor third person alone at the end of the table. But no more than 3. You got it? Because you only have 3 minutes. If you form larger groups, you're not going to get airtime. So share what you've come up with for 3 minutes. Pair up now.
I think there's the progressive. It's the availability of that information and the ability to distort
Okay. Okay, the table's over there. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you're like me, I want to get my last big point in after they clang the thing. Okay, so We'll test the acoustics here. I was glad you had people from table stands, so I know mostly people can hear, but I'll repeat. So who would like to start with one source of polarization that you talked about? Yes, sir. Why don't you stand up?
Social media,
Social media.
and the desire to be reelected.
So let's only one. You snuck in two. Okay, just one. We'll go with so just sit down. So go with them. Well, I didn't even hear the second one. Okay, social media. So say more about how social media fuels polarization. Yes, yeah. After I insulted you, I'm asking you to say more. So how does social media fuel it?
How does it feel?
No, how does it fuel polarization?
Fuel it because the instant that something happens, everybody in the United States knows what the heck is going on.
Yeah.
Just instantly.
Right. Whether it happened or didn't happen, everybody hears about it instantaneously.
And whether it is honest or not honest,
Yeah.
it doesn't make any difference. It's just out there for everybody to digest.
That's right. And we used to have to wait till the paper the next morning to hear some things. And there was some digesting, maybe some vetting of whether it's true or not. And now it's instantaneous. And it feeds particularly if it feeds my prejudice already about the person or the policy, absolutely. So another one. Yes?
We kind of did the same thing on the social media side, but it was more around when you speak now, okay, on social media, you can kind of hide behind it, right?
Yeah.
Speak pretty freely, but then what happens is you gain momentum, right? If you go back to the old days, you might have a conversation with somebody or a small group, and that's as far as it would go. Now when you say something, groups and hundreds, if not thousands of people are hearing what you have to say, and you start developing camps.
Yes.
Camp 1 that's agreeing with you, and Camp 2 that disagrees with you.
And larger camps than you ever could have before. And you're putting it in writing. You're not actually saying it. You're writing it, right? And so what we'll do is we will write down things that we would never say face to face. Okay? And then you get these followings. So somebody else, in addition to social media, what'd you come up with? Yeah. Okay.
Well, we talked a little bit about tribalism, the new word that's popped up maybe in the last year. The tribalism where before we were able to work as a group or as a community, and now the communities are fractured, or the country's fractured into this tribe and that tribe, and so you just really hold on to that notion that your tribe is right, and I don't care about your tribe at all.
Yes. Clearly that's been rising in the country. Yes, sir.
The whole, Putnam, nobody bowls anymore thing.
Yes, the bowling alone. Robert Putnam was a political scientist who wrote a famous book called Bowling Alone, the decline in membership organizations.
Yeah, groups like this are sort of on the decline.
Yeah.
So it's much easier for us, just even without having it to be a political conversation, we just aren't really engaging with diversity and talking with other people in our communities as much as we used to.
Yes, we're not doing the organizations that cut across some of those differences, right? So organizations like this and Rotary and others are struggling because you're not a special interest group, right? And you don't have political litmus tests. The organizations that are like the PTAs that decline and others that brought people together for a common cause that your political affiliation had nothing to do with. And those have gone down. So we don't relate to people who are that different. Yeah, so let's go, where do we have, yes, sir.
So this is kind of more on the younger side of growing up. I know a lot of us nowadays are kind of taught to not talk about three main things if you don't want conflict: religion, money, and politics. So if you're not spending as much time with people as kids growing up with social media, and you don't get a lot of exposure to the other side, you might never even know that there's another side or how they would ever think.
So you as for the young people, couldn't even imagine how the other side thinks. You're not just engaging them. Okay, yes, absolutely, yeah, very interesting. And you said growing up with social media. Nowadays, young people talking on the phone is considered a kind of an intimate thing that you want to be careful about doing. Right? I'm not kidding. So there's a decline in those sort of social skills. Yes, ma'am.
With all due respect to elected officials in the room, elected officials' primary goal is to be reelected.
Yeah, now, the goal is to be reelected. What I'd say is that's always been true, okay? One of the things that's happened now, if I could just add on to that, is that two major parties are much they're different from each other more than they used to be. So you used to have conservative Democrats and liberal Republicans, and the two tents kind of overlapped. And now in Congress, the most conservative Democrat is much more liberal than the most liberal Republican. Okay? And then, then if you combine that with gerrymandering, then for an elected official, the biggest threat to being reelected is from the more extreme on your own flank. Okay? Not from somebody in the middle. And so if you are seen as compromising with the enemy, there's somebody who will come along and primary you. And so in Congress at least, the biggest threat is not so much the general election as the primary elections, with all of the rewards going for you to be more extreme. So that's an important thing you brought up. Yes, ma'am in the back. Yep, that's you.
I would say, as a person who's in the media, the way that I was taught many years ago was news reporters report facts, opinions, editorial writers write about their opinions. But the tone has changed so dramatically. So you turn on a news program in the morning, and the anchor reads the news, and then sort of sighs and comments.
So could you hear what she's saying? The anchor reads the news, sighs and comments. Yeah.
And it's the tone and the way they
Yeah.
deliver it, the body language, the
Yeah.
tone, that it's, right away people already know, what's the opinion,
Yeah.
what's the form, if you like that news program, as opposed to just making your own decision based on the facts that you believe.
So you came from an older era with journalism, huh? Where they made a distinction. Yeah, you don't look that old, but anyway, you must have been. And so they've actually been able to do studies of this, of the nonverbals, and they can tell. And yeah, so there is a decline in just informing, as opposed to informing with an opinion attached to it. Let's go back over here to somebody over here. Yes, sir.
I see an emphasis toward away from people running for elected office to serve, and running for elected office now for power and control.
So less of a service orientation, you're saying, in what you see in elected officials versus power and control. Okay. Anything else hasn't come up? Yeah.
I thought an impact would be the money that is behind, the gun lobby or whatever, and all of that impact. It certainly has to have an impact.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Money is another one. There's more special interest money than before. People gave money to politicians and to parties, and now you can do your money for a special issue, and then you can reach out to a Montana congressional race and pour millions of dollars around a special issue, often to demonize one of the people who's running, in order to influence the balance of Congress. So it wasn't around before in the same way now. That really, and again, a lot of that money is attack ads, and unfortunately they work. So somebody else who hasn't spoken, yeah.
The government is just much more intrusive in our lives today, so it has more of an effect. Because of a 2015 change in federal regulations, my health care insurance went up 17% this year. So where before, it didn't affect us that much.
Yeah, so the bigger the footprint of government, the more at stake we feel in this. So I'll take a couple of more and then finish up. Yes.
I would say financial insecurity and disparity that leads to really negative competition.
Yes, so there's a lot more in the last 30 years, a lot more economic insecurity, even among the middle class. So poor people always have had economic insecurity, but worldwide in the developed nations, there is more economic insecurity. And at the same time, when you have higher levels of immigration and refugees, which is happening around the Western world, when you have economic insecurity and levels of immigration such as we've not had since the early 20th century, when you have those two together, you get a kind of a boiling pot. Okay, where right or wrong, people feel threatened by these social changes. So rapid social change, rapid cultural change, with economic insecurity, And then we look for a political leader who will say, I've named it, I know what it's from, and then I will deliver you from this. So we could do more, but you've captured a whole bunch of the causes, and I find it helpful to think of these, as we've been doing here, not belonging to one party, but of forces that are happening over and over, and have gotten us into very big trouble, such that whoever's elected president, the other party's primary job is to defeat them the next 4 years. Okay, and we've had in recent presidential elections attacks on whether somebody is duly the president. Did I ask for that?
I felt like you needed it.
You felt like I needed it. Thank you. Do you have any vodka in there or anything like that? I could use that. I was on a great roll there. No, it's gin. Okay. So we've had either presidents who did not win the popular election, and then a lot of people say it's not valid, or we had a president who people said was not born in the country and therefore was not legally the president. Our last 3 presidents, we've had people on the other side say, not a valid president. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So how does somebody like me, a family therapist, writing these books about parenting, right? How did I get involved in this stuff? Here's how it happened. 2 weeks after the 2016 presidential election, I got a call from a colleague of mine, David Blankenhorn in New York City. And we had done work on family issues before. And he lived in the Upper East Side of Manhattan. He told me he had called another colleague of ours, another David, who lives in Southwest Ohio. Now, if you have any idea of the geography of elections, and you think of who did the Upper East Side of Manhattan vote for, and then who did Southwest Ohio vote for, they were comparing notes about their communities. And there was like a funeral going on after the election, extended funeral in New York, and dancing in the streets in Southwest Ohio. And they decided on the spur of the moment to get together 10 Trump voters and 10 Clinton voters together for 13 hours over a weekend in December and see if they could talk to each other. So they called me, and I said, just like you did, I went, oh, that's brave. What were you thinking of doing with them? And they said, we don't know. We thought you could figure that out, Bill. And I remember sitting at in my home office here in Roseville, looking at my calendar. I don't, like you, I don't have one of those little calendars. It's actually paper. Hoping I was not free that weekend. But I was. So we did it. We got those 20 people together, and we did Friday night, all day Saturday, and Sunday afternoon. And it was, when we asked people, why did you come? This is from South Lebanon, Ohio. They said, we can't go on with this rancor and still run our community. We have schools to run. We have roads to build. We have hospitals. We have to figure out a way to get along and run this community. That's why they came. So it was really powerful. It was really intense. They came to see that they were not as far apart as they thought as human beings. They differed on policies, but they both everybody wanted best for their community and the country. So then they didn't want to stop. They wanted a reunion. So I cashed in another frequent flyer, went back to Ohio, and they wrote a report to the nation from this. They said this has to go on. So we decided to do another workshop in Ohio in the spring, and then something happened that's never happened in my professional career. I was doing a call-in show for National Public Radio where I was invited by Kerry Miller from Minnesota Public Radio. The 100 days after the election of Trump, the National Public Radio did a call-in show each evening from 7 to 8 our time. 2 liberal hosts, 2 conservative hosts. And Kerry Miller, who I'd been on her show talking about marriage or something, I told her about the Ohio workshop. She said, why don't you come on and be interviewed? And I was interviewed with 2 women from Ohio, we call Red and a Blue, who had become friends after the workshop. They were in a radio station in Columbus. And so we talked about that weekend, and we talked about this thing that we're starting at Better Angels. And then what happened was we had people email us from all over the country saying, could you come to our town and do a workshop? We'll put you up in our houses, we'll find a venue, we'll recruit the people. So, okay. But I knew we couldn't just do weekends because those are very intensive. So back in Minnesota, I developed a day-long version of this and a 3-hour, mini version. Tried them out. They seemed to be impactful. And I developed a skills workshop where we teach people how to communicate across the political divide. So then what we did was we rented a politician's bus. It happened to be John Boehner's old bus, Representative Boehner. And we started on July 4th, 2017 in Ohio. And we had a concert, a benefit concert that featured Richard Lynch, who is a country western singer, Hall of Fame, and a Tea Party founder in Southwest Ohio. He's singing along with Peter Yarrow of Peter, Paul, and Mary. We had 50 Reds, we call it 50 Conservatives, 50 Liberals there. And when they sang This Land Is Your Land together, there was not a dry eye in the place, okay? And they bonded over this. So then that was the beginning of our bus tour. We went through 8 states and 15 towns like a grade level B basketball team, doing workshops in little towns and other places, and tuning the workshops, trying to figure out how to do it better. And as David Blankenhorst said, we realized we had lightning in a bottle because the media turned out at every stop. We had conservative media and liberal media. I remember we had the Washington Post guy on one side of the room and the Washington Times guy on the other side of the room not making eye contact with each other. And the next week we had Al Jazeera come. And so we knew we had something, so we decided to really go national with this and to have this nonprofit Better Angels. We're now in 32 states. Workshop in Minnesota is a hub of it. And I want to show you an ABC video now that took place at our first convention. We had a convention with 70 red delegates and 70 blue. Red means more conservative, tend to be more Republican. Blue means more liberal, tend to be more Democratic. And so we had a convention. And my wife bought the lanyards. You had a red lanyard or a blue lanyard, okay? And we were on a college campus, and we had our meals together in the cafeteria. And I want to tell you, unlike what maybe happens with teenagers, the Reds and Blues did eat together, sought each other out. And so I'm going to just show you an ABC Nightline came to it, and so I'm going to show you about 6 minutes of that. And they're going to feature 2 men from the second Ohio workshop who were as opposite as you could imagine politically. You're going to see them at the beginning here. You're going to see Greg Smith, who is a strong Trump supporter, an evangelical Christian, former police officer, and who came to try to convert everybody to his viewpoint. And you're going to see Kuyar Mustafi, who is an Iranian Muslim immigrant and on the County Democratic Committee. And they happened to sit next to each other. We didn't assign seats. And they connected at that weekend, and they have become friends since then. They drove together from Ohio to Virginia for our convention, and you'll see them in this. Okay.
We're ahead of schedule in a little bit.
You're witnessing the beginning of a road trip
This ain't a hybrid, is it?
undertaken by 2 of the strangest political bedfellows imaginable. Greg Smith is a retired police chief and construction worker from rural Southwest Ohio. He's a devout evangelical and an ardent Trump supporter.
I really believe in his values. I really believe that he loves this country. He messes up, but so do I. If I was president, I'd probably be just like him.
What time is your music class, by the way, tomorrow?
2.
Kuyar Mostafshi lives just a few miles away in suburban Dayton, but he might as well be on another planet. He immigrated from Iran and now works as a computer engineer and is an active member of the local Democratic Party.
After the election, I was devastated. I was ready to cut every Republican out of my life.
These two men with seemingly irreconcilable differences became friends through a group called Better Angels, which brings together Reds and Blues with the goal of, quote, depolarizing America.
Hillary for president! Donald Trump!
Political polarization, or tribalism, has reached a fever pitch in America. Divisions between red and blue are more stark than ever. It's not just polite disagreement. Nearly half of Republicans and Democrats see the opposing party as a threat to the nation's well-being.
No matter what topic you pick now, you're going to get this horrible tribal conflict over it that prevents anything productive from happening.
David Blankenhorn is the founder and president of Better Angels.
Even before the 2016 election, it seemed clear that this was really cancer.
The group's appeal to national unity immediately rang true for both Greg and Kuyar when they met at their first Better Angels gathering.
When you get past the stereotype part of everything, you've got it beat. You got it beat.
To me, it was nice to also see his other side of, compassion and the fact that he wants to listen to me and learn about my background.
They ended up visiting one another's places of worship, and the friendship just grew from there. And on this day, they are traveling together from Ohio to Virginia.
You probably want to make a left.
To attend the first ever Better Angels National Convention.
Both sides think they're being attacked by the other side.
You say you care about the going on and you hate the argument, you hate the bitter and all that kind of stuff, but what are you going to do about it?
In the car, weighty issues are hashed out. They agree to disagree on abortion, but they do find common ground on guns.
The whole point about training, the whole point about accountability for people that own firearms. I mean, that is a no-brainer.
Where should we park?
You can park anywhere, Ken.
They arrive in Harrisonburg, Virginia, where they meet up with other political odd couples from across the country.
I want to hear people who aren't like me. I wanted to hear their stories and understand why they vote the way they do.
I actually have felt polarization a lot within my family. I guess that's kind of where it started.
Because of the polarization, we are finding ourselves in more and more isolation.
Anthony Ginger is the president of the Young Democrats at Graceland University in Iowa, and his roommate, Christian Sarabia, runs the campus Republican group.
Your roommates, even though you basically agree on nothing politically?
Correct. Yes. We believe our opinions strongly. However, we understand there are perspectives other than ours.
What practical pieces of advice could you give to anybody watching about how to have constructive relationships with people with whom you disagree deeply?
Evaluate yourself. You have to want to open yourself up to new ideas, new beliefs, not necessarily to want to persuade the other person.
If any of us are here with the idea that in 3 hours or 7 hours, we're going to get these people to change their mind, it's not going to go well.
The Better Angels have a strict format designed to keep things civil. And it was designed by this man, a marriage counselor named Bill Doherty.
You had a long history of working with couples on the precipice of divorce in some cases. Did this strike you as harder or easier than that?
Oh, harder. These were strangers, and strangers from different tribes. And those tribes have been at war. Your job is to listen and learn how people in this group perceive this issue.
Here's how a Better Angels meeting works. The Reds or the Blues, whichever group is going first,
We should be willing to serve other people.
in this case, it's the Blues, gather in the center with the Reds observing on the outside.
The idea was to create a process in which there was little chance that people would get reactive to each other and escalate. Where do you stand on this LGBT rights, religious liberty issue, and why?
5 years ago, my son came out, and I was nothing but supportive of him, but still it made me stop and think about things a little bit.
2013, I had a non-legal wedding, and we went to a hotel, and we were refused service.
Then the Reds go while the Blues listen.
I see, I see marriage as something that's between a man and a woman.
For the purpose of having children, so that the children have parents that will pass on the values of society.
Very few of us get a chance to hear a group of like-minded people talk among themselves. They're not arguing with anybody.
After the fishbowl, it's direct one-on-one conversations between the two sides.
Experience that the one woman gave about not being allowed to check into hotels, just obviously completely unacceptable in every possible way.
Again, the end goal here is not to change minds, but to reach what the Better Angels call accurate disagreement, which can lead to mutual understanding.
The end goal is humanizing one another despite our political differences.
Humanizing, not getting people to, change their moral compass or something like that.
No.
Let me ask just about this exercise that we've just seen. How did it go for the two of you?
These are deeply held beliefs on both sides, and we've got to talk about them, even if it feels hard.
So hard but worth doing.
Yeah,
Actually, maybe hard but must do.
absolutely.
So what are the takeaways for those of us who struggle to talk politics with friends, family, or colleagues? One, it's worth repeating this, don't try to change anybody's mind.
If you enter into this and they sense your goal is to show them how stupid they are with their perspective, they're going to put their defenses up.
Two, make I statements rather than truth statements.
So I am, for example, really concerned about climate change and what's going to happen to my grandchildren and great-grandchildren's generation.
And three, don't characterize the other side's opinion, just characterize your own.
So don't say, you guys want to just grow government. That would be a red saying to blue. Don't say a blue to a red. Your side just wants to, let people die on the street.
Better Angels is only 18 months old with 3,100 members across the country, and they say they are growing and scalable.
The common thing people tell us is, I have been waiting for something like this, and I've wanted something like this.
Wait no more. Better Angels is open for business and looking to get more conversations started before it's too late. For Nightline, this is Dan Harris in Harrisonburg, Virginia.
Okay. So, yeah. So I'll take a few questions and then I have some concluding comments. Yes. Oprah did something on 60 Minutes that I say when I talk about this is the opposite of what Better Angels does. If you want to Google and see something the opposite of what we do, despite the good intentions, Google Oprah Winfrey 60 Minutes political. She brought 7 reds and 7 blues together with no structure except to say, what do you think of immigration? How about the Russian collusion thing? And so here's what the thing I've learned. You have to have a structure and a process that brings out people's best selves. Greg and Kuyar would hate each other right now if they were in an unstructured, they have been in an unstructured environment. So that was an example of, but even there, people still wanted to get together afterwards, even without the good structure. So the good things that came from it. But what I brought to this, when I'm doing couples therapy, when people come in, I don't let them talk to each other. I make them talk to me. If they could talk to each other, they wouldn't be paying me. And only when they're getting better do I let them talk to each other. So thank you for the question. Other questions? Quick question, yeah.
Did you find that this proliferated down through other members of their family, their friends? So when they went through this experience, is it kind of organically growing, or is it just staying with them?
Interesting question. We don't know if it's organically gone to their family and friends, but you've given me a chance to advertise a new workshop that's happening, so I set this up. So we have what we call red-blue workshops, where we bring 7 reds, 7 blues together, either for 3 hours or a full day. And they're going on all over the Twin Cities, by the way. We're probably one of the biggest hubs in the country for this. And we also have skills workshops where you learn how to communicate, how to talk in a way that others may hear you, how to listen in a way they feel heard. But just recently, what we've begun to realize is that a lot of polarization is fueled by how we talk to like-minded people about those others. And so the new workshop, which was piloted for the first time 2 weeks ago in Roseville, and will be repeated next week in Roseville, is on depolarizing within. How do I deal with my own tendency to polarize? And then how do I interact with my fellow political tribe members so that we don't ridicule, disparage, and stereotype and demonize millions of people on the other side. And I'm not talking about what we might say about a politician we don't like, feel free. But when we say, how could those people possibly support this or that, and then demonize and ridicule. So the new workshop, so here's the commercial announcement. March 18th, a week from Monday. Do people know about Do Good Roseville? It's a nonprofit. You should have some applause. Do Good Roseville is a gem. 2 local women got it together. Go on the website. They sponsor all kinds of workshops and things. So Google Do Good Roseville on Monday, March 18th, 6 to 9 p.m. here in Roseville. I'm doing the second ever workshop on depolarizing within. And so some of those are the skills, Derek, just to your question, is so people can go to a workshop and you have this experience of like, these people aren't so crazy. And then you go home and they say, you're crazy. Because that's what they're like, okay? So what are the skills in being an agent of depolarization within one's own community? Yes, sir. Would you pass?
How do you locate your participants?
How do we locate the participants? We have 2 ways. We have red organizers and blue organizers, so people whose job it is to recruit. We also have libraries, so the Ramsey County Library System sponsors workshops, okay? So the Rotary sponsored some skills workshops. The Rotary sponsored actually in one evening last spring. The Rotary in the state sponsored 3 skills workshops in different parts of the state on the same night. So we have some organizations that are considered neutral, and then other times we recruit, we have a red and blue recruiter. Yes, sir.
40 years ago, I founded the International Listing Association, and March 21st to the 24th, we have our 40th convention.
Wow.
In Vancouver, and our theme for this year is listening to conflict.
Yeah.
My question to you is, as I listen to what you're doing, and I know what these people around the world are doing in the listening world, it seems to me that there's a great opportunity for convergence.
Yes, a great opportunity. We're in touch with many of those organizations. It's good to hear of this one. Yes.
I'd like to talk more about that.
Sure, absolutely. There are lots of folks working on this. I want to say that we had the fortune, this was David Blankenhorn's idea at the beginning, is that, and how we got started with the red and the blue, by bylaws, Better Angels is led by half reds and half blues. The board is half red, half blue. The leadership is half red, half blue. And that's been a secret to some of our success. Because, in fact, most people who get into the conflict resolution area for a living are blue. Okay? And so it's hard, if you're all blues, to get the trust of reds. And so that's one of the things that's happened. Yes, ma'am?
I just want to get the quote right from that clip. Is it accurate disagreement?
Accurate disagreement.
Lead to mutual understanding.
Yes, well, here's the thing. If we take the time to get to understand each other's perspectives so that I can say it back to you, and you go, that's it, you can say it back to me, we actually understand where we disagree. And that usually means we understand where we agree.
Right, we all have more in common than we do.
Right, that's what people say at the end of these workshops, that they understand that at the level of goals and aspirations for the country, there's a lot more similarity than difference, even though we differ maybe strenuously on how to get there. But accurate disagreement is you really have to work hard at that. You know, in my own world, and I need to be wrapping up here pretty soon, I've always wanted to be bilingual, but I never was. But now I am. I can speak red or blue. And it's really quite enriching. So what I've learned to do, you could take almost any political topic, and I can give a thoroughgoing conservative view on it, or a thoroughgoing liberal view on it, and be equally convincing. And that's actually what I have to do as marriage counselor, by the way. I have to get both people's perspective fully. And if you can do that, you actually have more respect for people on the other side. Because usually what we do is we have this complex view of our own side's position on this, and then this simplistic view of the other side's. which basically says how in the world could they believe that? Or we compare the best people on our side with the worst people on their side. These are all, right? And then we cherry pick outrageous statements. All you have to do is listen to radio. Cherry pick the most outrageous thing coming from the other side and say that's mainstream over there. Whereas for our own side, you know there's crazies, right? So you go, that's the crazy over there. So these are some of the habits of the heart of depolarization. So what I'd like to do in finishing up, I know you got to do a little bit more here. And by the way, our workshops always end on time. Always end on time. Is to say that we are a membership organization. So you can look at better-angels.org. It's $12 a year. Then you're on our local list. You find out what's going on. We have more members per capita in Minnesota than any other state. Lots of and there are only 6 paid people working for the whole organization. The rest of us are volunteers. There's nobody paid in Minnesota, including our state coordinator. So it's volunteer, led, and we're growing. We have interest in the legislature. Dave mentioned I did 2 skills workshop for Democrats, a skills workshop for Republicans. I'm working now, crossing my fingers, to get with 2 of our elected members of Congress who have expressed some interest in having their staffs go through a Better Angels workshop together. And maybe that could be a stepping stone to something in Congress. Because what I want to tell you, when I did the things for the legislature, and I asked them why they came, a lot of them said when they door knocked this year, they heard, more than anything else they heard from people, is this divisiveness has to stop. Because it's paralyzing our state, it's paralyzing our country. And so this sort of bottom up, we have to get past this, is really important. So I want to urge you to join us, go to a workshop. I'm not going to take more questions because I have to be careful of the time. So I would like to, but I'm happy to stay around afterwards. And I would like to end by saying that how great it is to be with a group of optimists at this time in our country. And I'm going to read from Abraham Lincoln. Our name Better Angels came from the first inaugural address of Abraham Lincoln, when he talked about the better angels of our nature. So I'm going to end with this and with gratitude for your inviting me. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic chords of memory I get emotional every time I read this thing. The mystic chords of memory will yet swell the chorus of the union when again touched as surely they will be by the better angels of our nature. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Professor. That was fabulous, and it's really something that we all need to work on and continue. And I hope that we see and hear more of this organization, and I encourage all of you to look at the handout, and maybe we can increase your membership that way. I also have for you today a copy of our book, Voices of Optimism, because I think that some of the things that have been written here could be helpful in the programs you're doing. Yeah. And so I'll give you that.
Thank you.
And right behind it, I have a copy of the Optimist Creed. And as I think about and listen to you today, the work that you're doing in Better Angels, and I'm sure as you're working with your families that are in distress, that some of the things in the Optimist Creed may be helpful to you and to them. And for sure that you are bringing out in the youth, but even better, our communities and ourselves. And we really appreciate that. And we want to see more of you back at our organization.
Good. Thank you so
very
much. Thank you so much.